Welcome to another deep dive with the CRM Position Podcast. Okay, let's just unpack this right away.
Let's do it.
We are officially past the toy phase of generative AI. I think we can all agree on that. We spent, 2 years arguing about how to write a slightly better email summary?
Right.
That conversation is over. This is not about productivity assistants anymore. We're in the third wave now. Autonomous agents.
We absolutely are.
We're talking about systems that don't just understand language, but actively reason, plan, and critically execute mission-critical business processes.
And look, this is an architectural inflection point. If you're still designing your enterprise systems based on a purely human-driven, deterministic workflow, you're already behind.
Already behind.
This shift isn't incremental, it's fundamental. The Agentblazer Innovator certification. It's not just a new badge for your LinkedIn. It validates the small group of professionals who are managing this transition.
From passive tools to...
From passive tools that wait for a human command to active, probabilistic systems that act on their own initiative, this role is a strategic necessity, like today.
And that gets right to the core mindset change, the thing we need to address immediately with you, our listener. Historically, enterprise software, especially CRM, it was built on this model of strict command and control.
Always.
The human clicks a button, enters data, requests a report, and the system responds deterministically. Input A, always, without exception, leads to output B.
But that dynamic is now fundamentally inverted, or at least it's balanced against the agent. The Agentforce system now perceives the environment, it reasons about the gap between the current state and the goal state, and it acts autonomously.
To fulfill high-level, often kind of ambiguous human objectives.
Exactly. The human objective becomes strategic, like improve customer retention by 10%, or close service cases 20% faster. The system then figures out the steps.
So it's determining the data retrieval, the sequence of actions, everything needed to hit that goal.
Which means we have to move from configuring rigid data fields and menus to really designing enterprise cognition.
That distinction configuration to cognition is massive. It implies a whole new kind of architect is needed. So what does this pivot mean for the innovator, specifically level 2, in this new path?
They occupy this critical liminal space. Think of them as the chief engineer, right? Sitting at the bridge between high-level business strategy and the low-code technical deployment.
So their job is diagnosis and risk management.
That's the strategic imperative. Is this specific business process, say, a complex return authorization suited for probabilistic automation, where an LLM needs to reason through ambiguity?
Or does it demand a deterministic flow that has to follow strict corporate or regulatory rules?
That decision, that single decision, determines the ROI and the entire compliance profile of the deployment.
So they're not writing the core code, and they're not just managing users. They are the architects of the logic of application, the orchestration.
Precisely. They connect the business need to the AI's capabilities, and, crucially, they establish the guardrails around its freedom to operate.
Okay, let's challenge some assumptions right now. Traditional admins, classic architects, they live in that deterministic world. A always equals B.
They're comfortable there.
So why does that framework just completely fall apart the second we introduce an autonomous agent?
Because the core text getter, the large language models, is inherently non-deterministic. They're probabilistic models.
Right.
When you ask an agent to do something, the output isn't a guaranteed script execution. It's the most probable next sequence of tokens based on its training and the context you give it. You can't control probability with a flowchart.
That is the friction point. How does an innovator manage uncertainty in a business where errors could cost millions or cause compliance failures? We can't just accept that the agent might pick the 10th most probable answer.
You don't accept it. You constrain the probability down to near certainty. The innovator's core value is transforming that LLM from a creative generator into a reliable execution engine.
And how do they do that?
2 primary mechanisms we're going to dig into: advanced prompt engineering and strict grounding. They have to define the boundaries of what's acceptable, forcing reliable, predictable outcomes from an unpredictable model.
And if that foundation isn't built right, you just get a creative, chatty, but ultimately useless system that no exec would ever bet on.
Absolutely. The difference between a consumer chatbot and a true enterprise agent is the innovator's skill in managing that constraint.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for anyone trying to get the architecture. We have to look under the hood, at the brain of the operation.
The Atlas reasoning engine.
Exactly. If the agent is the body, Atlas is the cognitive system. Walk us through that blueprint stage by stage.
So Atlas is way more complex than a simple API call. It's executing this rigorous, continuous cognitive loop that the innovator configures: perception, reasoning, action, and observation.
Stage 1. Invocation. Topic classification. A user says something in natural language, and Atlas has to figure out what they mean, instantly.
Correct. The innovator defines the agent's capabilities by creating topics in natural language, like gestión de pedidos for order management or dificultad de pago for payment difficulty.
So when a query comes in, Atlas analyzes the semantic intent, matches it to a topic, and routes it to the right tool set.
Right.
What's the immediate architectural risk an innovator has to mitigate right there at that first step?
The risk is topic overlap. This is the single biggest failure point in early AI deployments because, well, humans use ambiguous language.
Give me an example.
Let's say the innovator defines gestión de pedidos and a separate topic for rastreo de envíos, shipment tracking. The semantics are too close.
So if the user says, "Where is my stuff?"
Does that mean they want to change the order or just track the package? The classification engine struggles to disambiguate.
And if classification fails?
The agent either hallucinates an answer because it doesn't know where to go, or it routes to the wrong set of tools. You get an immediate, fractured user experience.
So the innovator's job isn't about configuring menus anymore. It's about defining a clear ontology. They're basically ontological engineers.
That's a perfect way to put it. They're mapping linguistic intent to functional capability.
A subtle but profound shift. Okay, so once the topic is routed, Atlas moves to stage 2, context assembly, building the intelligence for the query.
This is the critical ARAG step, the augmented retrieval. Atlas pulls context from 3 dimensions at once: the conversation history, relevant transactional data from the CRM, and the deep contextual data in Data Cloud.
And the innovator's stitching all that together.
They configure the topic instructions, the agent's goal, and the action descriptions, the tools it has. Atlas then combines all of that with the user query and the retrieved data to form this massive dynamic instruction set, the mega prompt.
And that mega prompt is the single point of execution. The quality of the RAD, the precision of the instructions, that's what determines the outcome. Garbage in, garbage out.
Absolutely. Think of it like a legal brief. If you omit crucial facts or give conflicting instructions, the result will be flawed no matter how smart the lawyer is.
Then we hit stage 3, action selection and planning. The LLM gets the mega prompt and generates a plan. What's the fundamental choice it's making?
The core question is always, do I need a tool and action to achieve this, or can I answer it just from the context I was given?
And the innovator is responsible for filling that toolkit.
The innovator curates the agent's action library. These can be pre-built CRM tools, custom flows, Apex queries for backend ops, or specialized prompts. But here's the critical detail.
Go on.
The agent selects the action based purely on its description, not its technical name.
Wow, so the description is the new functional spec. We're programming by descriptive intent.
It's the highest form of semantic programming. A vague description like, use this to calculate costs, is dangerous. The innovator must write something precise. For example, use esta acción para calcular el impuesto sobre la renta.
Use this action to calculate income tax based on postal code and customer income data following 2024 tax regulations.
That clarity ensures the tool is used safely and only when the reasoning engine decides it's necessary.
So governance and logic are moving out of the code block and into the semantic instruction set, which brings up this concept of the dial of determinism. Where does the innovator sit when tuning that dial?
They are the master controller of that spectrum. Salesforce gives them 5 attributes to adjust: the agent's role, its data access, the available actions, the binding guardrails, and the channels it uses.
And by tweaking those 5, they set the agent's level of freedom.
Exactly. They set the spectrum of determinism.
There's a clear contrast.
For a strict regulatory process like loan origination and banking, the rules must be rigid, highly deterministic. You'd rely mostly on pre-audited flows. The dial is turned all the way up.
And for something more creative.
Like generating marketing concepts or doing a first-level support triage, the LLM gets more freedom. It's more probabilistic. The innovator's mastery is balancing those trade-offs. They decide where the enterprise needs creativity and where it demands ironclad process.
That level of architectural control over language is fascinating.
It's the only way this is viable. If you treat every business process as equally probabilistic, you will fail in regulated markets. Period.
Let's pivot to the source of all this intelligence. The data. An agent is only as smart as its data. Data Cloud is positioned as the agent's external memory. Why is it more than just a glorified data lake?
Because it's the cognitive substrate of the autonomous enterprise. I mean, think about it. An agent trying to achieve improved customer retention can't function if sales data is siloed from service tickets and web logs.
So the innovator's primary job here is unifying those silos.
It's modeling DMOs, data model objects, and data graphs to establish that real-time, unified customer 360 view the agent needs to reason effectively.
And these DMOs, how do they specifically enable this kind of reasoning in a way that, say, a traditional relational schema doesn't?
Well, traditional schemas are optimized for transactional integrity, speed, consistency. DMOs are optimized for analytical and contextual query performance at massive scale. They let the innovator define a unified data layer, like a customer unificado object that pulls attributes from dozens of underlying systems.
So when the agent does a RAG retrieval, it gets a clean, structured piece of context instead of having to stitch together fragments from 10 different API calls.
DMOs normalize the data before it gets to the agent. It's a critical pre-processing step.
And we're not talking megabytes here, we're talking petabytes across legacy systems. That brings up the efficiency challenge.
Which is why the innovator has to leverage Federation Zero Copy. This is critical. They configure agents to reason over huge data sets in external warehouses, like Snowflake or Databricks, without costly ETLs or duplicating the data.
So no data latency, no massive storage costs, and no governance headache of syncing two giant data sets. It lowers the TCO and ensures real-time reasoning.
It solves the scale problem and the freshness problem in one shot. If an agent needs 10 years of purchase history, Zero Copy makes that instantly available without moving petabytes.
But the real leap forward, the thing that unlocks deep enterprise knowledge, is activating the unstructured data. The 90% of knowledge buried in PDFs, contract transcripts.
It's inert data until the innovator acts. They have to configure vector search indexes in Data Cloud. This transforms those documents into mathematical vectors for semantic retrieval.
So the agent can understand the meaning, not just match keywords.
Exactly.
Can you give us some more detail on the chunking strategy? Why is that an architectural decision for the innovator?
Chunking is huge. It's breaking a big document into smaller, semantically coherent pieces before you vectorize it. The size of that chunk is a profound architectural choice.
How so?
If chunks are too big, say 1,000 words, you give the LLM too much noise, you might even exceed its token window.
Which increases the chance of hallucination.
Precisely. But if the chunks are too small, say 50 words, the agent loses critical context. The sweet spot, maybe 250 to 500 words with some overlap, has to be figured out by the innovator based on the document type. Legal contracts need different chunking than service transcripts.
And this leads us directly to the core trust element, grounding. This is non-negotiable for the enterprise. You have to anchor the probabilistic model in verifiable facts.
You do it through rigorous grounding, mostly configured in the prompt builder. The goal is to start asking the LLM to creatively generate facts and start asking it to process and reason over verified external facts.
How does the innovator configure this to make it auditably safe?
They build a dynamic prompt template that explicitly injects direct, verifiable references pulled from Data Cloud or the CRM. We call them merged fields.
Give me a before and after example. Vague prompt versus a grounded one.
A poor, ungrounded prompt is, what discount should this customer get? The LLM might just invent one. A disaster. The innovator design template explicitly reads, based on the field nivel-lealtad from Object Cliente Unificado, which is ORO, determine the precise discount from the pre-approved discount table Tabulaturifus 2024 provided in the ARA context.
So you're saying, here are the verifiable facts. Apply your logic to these facts and nothing else. You're transforming the LLM from a creative generator into a high-speed reasoning processor.
And that transformation is the only way highly regulated industries, finance, healthcare, will ever adopt this stuff. The intelligence comes from the trusted enterprise data the innovator feeds it, which provides a full audit trail.
Okay, so the innovator gets the cognitive architecture atlas and the trusted data substrate Data Cloud. Now, Pactal Execution, they are a builder, but mostly low code. Agent Builder is their IDE.
Agent Builder is where it all comes together. They define the agent's entire personality. Should it be formal for banking or friendly for retail? They set the scope via topic assignment. What can this agent handle? What must it escalate?
And they drag and drop the assets, the flows, actions, prompts.
Customizing and linking them all together to form the operational agent.
This is fascinating because in a traditional system, you debug the code. Here, you're debugging the thought process. How do they even do that?
They use the plan tracer. This tool is absolutely indispensable, and it represents a radical shift in skills. It visualizes the agent's entire cognitive path.
It shows you the whole trace.
The whole thing. User query was X. Atlas categorized it as Y. It retrieved data Z. It considered action A and action B, scored A at 85%, B at 15%. It executed A. Why did it do that when the business outcome required B?
So the innovator reviews the trace, finds where the reasoning went off the rails, maybe an ambiguous instruction or a poorly described action, and refines it.
They debug cognition, not code. And they do it in real time by adjusting instructions, grounding, or guardrails. It's algorithmic thinking, but expressed in natural language.
Let's talk strategic efficiency. How do we leverage the thousands of hours and millions of dollars already invested in our existing business logic, our Salesforce flows?
This is maybe the platform's most strategic capacity. Salesforce Flow becomes the agent's actual, secure, audited hand in the enterprise. The innovator doesn't reinvent the wheel.
So they take an existing flow, say, the return process, mark it available for Agentforce.
And then they write that precise semantic description we talked about earlier.
So the agent reasons I need to process a return. It finds the flow, calls it. The flow executes the complex deterministic logic and returns the result back to the agent to continue the conversation.
And the security benefits are massive. By using existing flows, the agent automatically inherits and adheres to all existing validation rules, permissions, and business logic. You don't have to rebuild the governance structure.
This brings us to the low-code, pro-code divide. The innovator is mostly low-code, but they have to know their limits. When do they stop and call the legend the pro-code developer?
The innovator lives in the orchestration domain. Flow for logic, prompt builder for text, data cloud for integration. They stop when the requirement needs high algorithmic complexity, custom data transformations, flow can't handle, new API connectors, or complex batch processing that needs Apex.
So if the agent needs to call a complex asynchronous external system with specific error handling, that's the developer's job.
Precisely. The innovator specifies the functional requirement for that deep code. Quote, I need an Apex action that takes a customer ID and returns the last 5 high-value transactions from the legacy system in under 500 milliseconds.
And the legend writes the Apex, handles the integration, and exposes it back to the innovator as a simple, describable action.
They're complementary forces. The innovator builds the application logic on top of the developer's secure, performant infrastructure.
Let's move to the most sensitive area: governance, trust, and the economics of efficiency. Any discussion of autonomous agents has to confront privacy fears head-on.
Because those fears can paralyze the deployment. The innovator must use the Einstein trust layer not as a checkbox, but as the core architectural argument for adoption.
How so?
The trust layer provides the safety buffer for sensitive data. The innovator must configure its 2 most critical functions. First, data masking.
This ensures that when enterprise data leaves Salesforce to go to an external LLM, it's neutralized.
Correct. Before the data exits, the trust layer detects sensitive patterns, credit cards, SSNs, names, and replaces them with synthetic tokens. It preserves the data structure for reasoning without exposing the actual PII.
So the agent can still do the task, but without ever knowing the customer's actual name or SSN.
Exactly. The intelligence is transferred, but the identity is protected. The second function is the zero retention policy. This is a contractual and architectural assurance.
Meaning?
It guarantees that LLM vendors don't retain enterprise data for their internal use or, critically, use it for public model training. This is the linchpin for winning trust from the legal department.
And governance also means setting hard, non-negotiable rules, guardrails.
This is about guard instructions, explicit negative rules the agent cannot violate. Things like, do not promise delivery dates less than 3 days, or the critical financial rule, do not provide investment advice.
And how do you enforce platform security? Stop a sales agent from reading HR data.
You enforce the principle of minimum privilege. The innovator configures the agent to run under a highly restricted integration user license. This limits the blast radius of any autonomous action. The underlying platform permissions always override the agent's reasoning.
Now let's talk money, the cold hard reality. These systems introduce a new cost variable, consumption, based on flex credits.
It absolutely changes the economic model.
Right.
Every conversation turn, every RGAG call, every LLM invocation costs credits. The innovator is now fundamentally an economic architect.
They have to design for turn efficiency.
Their design skill directly translates to ROI. A poorly designed agent with vague topics that gets stuck in a thinking loop making redundant calls. It will burn the budget exponentially.
So the innovator skill in prompt design, topic routing, and pre-qualifying intent. It's measured by resolving user intent in the fewest possible steps.
They're optimizing the cognitive transaction cost. And they have to advise the business on the purchasing model, pay-as-you-go versus pre-commit for volume discounts. The financial accountability of this role is unique and critical.
Let's ground all this in real enterprise execution. Let's dissect these blueprints. Case 1, automotive proactive service. This is way beyond simple maintenance alerts.
This is autonomous, data-driven fault management. The Innovator setup starts with Data Cloud ingesting real-time telematics. We're talking DTC error codes streaming into the platform.
So the agent isn't waiting for a customer complaint. It's triggered by the vehicle's data state change itself.
Exactly. The agent is triggered by a critical DTC code. It enters the Atlas reasoning cycle. It analyzes the code, performs a vector search on the technical manuals to diagnose the problem, checks the warranty status, and then executes a flow to book the appointment.
And the end result
is a highly personalized, autonomous WhatsApp message. We detected an oil pressure anomaly. This is covered by your warranty. The nearest dealer has the part in stock. Can we schedule your service for 9 a.m. tomorrow? The Innovator built that entire cognitive loop.
Incredible. Now, case 2, financial services, the digital private banker. Here, the trust and regulatory stakes are highest.
The scenario is complex debt restructuring, dificultad de pago. The Innovator needs to balance compliance with empathy.
And the guardrails have to be ironclad.
Absolutely. The most critical one is, if the client mentions quiebra, bankruptcy, or suicidio, suicide, immediately escalate to a human and activate crisis protocol.
So the agent can handle the conversation, but the complex calculation is a deterministic flow.
Right. It determines intent, pulls grounded data, and executes a flow that calculates new amortization tables. If the client accepts, it generates the legally binding contract PDF for e-signature. The agent knows its ethical boundary. The Innovator architects that boundary.
Finally, case 3, retail conversational commerce, moving from a frustrating chatbot to a real personal shopper.
Here, the agent acts as a true personal shopper. It accesses purchase history, web activity, real-time inventory.
The key is the personalized recommendation. It's creative, but anchored in facts.
The Recomendar Producto action uses a powerful grounded prompt. It reads something like, recommend 3 accessories for the dress the client bought last week, ensuring inventory is available now at their local store.
So it's combining LLM creativity with grounded data and a real-time inventory check via Flow.
And it handles the frustrating parts too, like returns. It can manage the whole RMA process autonomously, processing instant refunds for VIPs based on dynamic rules in a flow. It's using autonomous speed to drive loyalty.
Okay, we've established the mechanics and the blueprints. Let's conclude with a necessary competitive analysis. The market needs clarity. Why Salesforce Agentforce over, say, Microsoft Copilot Studio?
It's a philosophical and architectural difference, assistant versus agent.
Unpack that.
Microsoft Copilot is a productivity assistant. Its gravity center is internal efficiency in Microsoft 365. It's great at augmenting the individual worker summarizing docs, drafting emails. It's about increasing human output.
And Agentforce is a digital workforce.
Correct. Agentforce is designed for autonomous process execution. Its goal is to act directly on the customer record-closing cases, processing orders, human out of the loop. One augments the worker, the other automates the process.
And Salesforce's unjust advantage in this space?
It's Data Cloud. Salesforce provides that native, structured CRM context out of the box. For CX, sales, and service processes, having that deep, structured data context makes Agentforce inherently superior for mission-critical execution right now.
So who should care about mastering the Innovator level now? Who can safely ignore it for the next 18 months?
If your career involves managing the logic, orchestration, and architecture of customer-facing processes, the Innovator level is mandatory. You are the strategic bridge. Your success is measured in FCR and Agent CAT.
And if you're a classic admin focused on user management and reporting,
for now, you can remain a consumer of the AI. You use the tools, but you don't build or govern them. The future hierarchy is clear. The Innovator is the orchestrator, the admin is the consumer, and the legend, the developer, is the constructor. The Innovator is the strategic growth role today.
So we've defined the Innovator as the architect of engineered value. They master the probabilistic nature of LLMs, anchor them in trusted data with Data Cloud, enforce safety and governance with the trust layer, and designed for economic efficiency.
And ultimately, their success isn't measured in lines of code, but in their capacity to build the habitable building of the agentic enterprise systems that act with the efficacy of your best human employees. So the forward-looking takeaway is this. The question isn't if your company adopts agents, but who in your organization has the skills to govern them effectively.
You need to stay ahead of this architectural shift. If you are serious about understanding the real state-of-the-art in CRM and AI platform evolution, not the marketing narrative, but the actual technical and economic blueprint, then subscribe to the CRM Position podcast now. We give you the executive-level intelligence you need to lead these transformations.